just extraordinary. It was at the speed of light, really. The whole thing happened just whoosh. And I've never experienced anything like it since. And if you think that actually, there's me, would-be filmmaker, trying to get into film. I'd met Frank because of another film called Babylon, which there was a possibility of him directing. And then for some reason it didn't happen. It was going to be done as a BBC play for today, and he was going to direct it. So I'd met Frank, and then it didn't happen with this other film didn't happen with the BBC. And then I got this phone call out of the blue from Frank saying, look, we've got problems with the script. Would you come and have a look at it and see what you can do? So I did that. We met. I read the script. I had some solutions and some suggestions. And they were already into kind of pre-production, you see. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 6 weeks, to first day of principal photography. Sure. And we just I went away and did a draft. Came back, worked with Frank a bit, did a bit more on it, and that's how it happened. I think the reason it happened so quickly was partly because it was rock and roll. It was rock and roll money. It wasn't film biz money. And a lot of that is down to Bill and his connections and The Who and so on and so forth. But it was also the fact that, from a writer's point of view, I was brought in when the train had already left the station and was, kind of rolling, basically. But I've never been involved in anything where just kind of, and there's nothing as inspirational as knowing that the thing that you're writing is actually going to happen. Oh, completely. It was a complete. The thing about the script that I read was that it was very bare and kind of skeletal. And because I'd grown up in the period, I wasn't actually a fully fledged mod, because I was a sort of, North London Jewish mod, which meant basically that you didn't have a scooter or a parka, but you wore the penny loafers and the jackets, and went to the Flamingo and the Marquee and listened to the bands and all of that. But I knew about the period. So one of the things that wasn't in the script, and you could tell from the script, was there was no sense of period in it at all. And that I thought was very, very important. So like, for example, the scene in Quad, as I remember it, where Jimmy goes and gets fitted up with the nice suit. Going into the booth to listen to the sounds, those kinds of details. The other stuff that was going on in Britain, to do with the end of empire, which are kind of little details, but it's all texture. None of that, was really in the script. And I sort of feel it was a real kind of departure from the original very skeletal script. Very important, I think, because it's kind of atmospheric. It's inspirational. The lyrics. When I was first given it by Frank, I think I hadn't even seen the first script, and I was really shocked that the way that he wanted to take it was completely realism, down that particular road, and sort of really kind of carry on in some way the tradition of filmmaking that he'd already established as a kind of documentary filmmaker, kind of gritty, edgy, but realism, because the album suggested to me something more operatic, which of course you get in Tommy, um, and because in a way doing something realistic was, I mean, that was great because that's what I felt very comfortable with, doing it in a realistic way rather than a highly stylized Ken Russell kind of way, which I would have been very uncomfortable with. And I think probably the Who were quite surprised that it went that kind of realistic route, you know. We wanted to get the story right first, and you know, we kind of knew atmospherically, kind of tonally, what the songs were and where roughly the fixed points were. You know, so for example, there's a very obvious one, really obvious one. We knew that on his way back to Brighton. Well, that, you know, we knew that that song from the album had to go there. Um, you know, the one where the point in the story where he's on his own and Steph has gone off with his mate and he's standing by the sea. Whatever that song is, the title. I can see we've all done our research. You know, that song, we knew that that was roughly going to go there, but it was not prescriptive in any way at all, because you want to get the script right. It's a bit like when you decide to do a movie which has voiceover in it. You know, you can't. You need to get the kind of action and the images in the story right first before, you know, before. Or if you, I mean, yeah, there is another choice, which is you integrate your voiceover into the story, but that's not what we did with this. I think more could have been made of it, actually, but I think that because there's a kind of, you know, that sort of schizophrenia, that sort of fractured vision, or quadrophenia. There's a moment in the film where you've got 4 reflections of Jimmy, which is, I think, really the only kind of concession to that idea, that sort of fractured vision that you get in the album. And I think probably more could have been made of it, but we were wedded to this very, you know, that might have taken it into a much more surreal territory, you know. And I think we were wedded to this. It's got its feet on the ground. It's kitchen sink. It's gritty. It's the street. It's working class, and it's in a great British tradition of, you know, realism. You know, coming out of Richardson and, you know, all of that stuff. I was there a lot of the time. I was there in Brighton. I was doing last minute rewrites, and also, you know, one should never forget the collaborative nature of filmmaking. You know, that the actors bring something to the script that is fresh and often better than what you've written, or takes it somewhere else that's kind of interesting, and Frank, you know, let them do their thing. So you know, and then and maybe I would be doing last minute rewrites around some improvisation that the actors had done. But yeah, no, I was there kind of throughout the whole Brighton shoot, certainly during that. I mean, it's a masterful performance, and comparable, we said at the time, with De Niro's performance in Mean Streets. And I think actually I've never really understood why Phil didn't go on to become a huge star after it. I guess it's because of the nature of the sort of very kind of cottage industry nature of the British film business. It just, there isn't that the material there, you know, maybe. But an extraordinary performance. I mean, I quite honestly do not get it at all. And I realized how kind of lunatic the whole thing was, because there's a period of time when I was out in LA, and, you know, this was sort of 10 years, maybe between 5 and 10 years after the movie came out. And I was in this car, and this pack of 6, 7 scooters, guys on scooters with parkers on, just came by, and you know that's because Quad had become this cult movie and was playing in, you know, midnight screenings, on Hollywood Boulevard or wherever, you know. And this is just crazy, because it's like, this was a 60s thing, and here it is kind of reinvented in LA, and there's probably a kind of Japanese, you know, there's probably a Japanese equivalent, and a Czech equivalent, you know, they're probably few and far between, but yeah, I mean, I don't get it, and I think that, well, I think Frank's handle on it is right, because he says it's just kind of, somehow, we didn't know it at the time, but we were telling a universal story that is about kind of teenage angst, that speaks across generations.